Hey, it's your old pal Lucid Stu again, and this time we're going to take a look at some sculpting in VR with Dreams for PS4. This will be rigid on-grid sculpting before working more freely in the next video, so let's get to it. My routine for starting a new sculpt is to delete the default terrain square, pick a base color, and then lay down a single sphere edit at the origin with looseness turned down as far as possible. This serves to establish the center for the mirror and kaleidoscope tools, as well as setting a good tightness to work with and laying a foundation for materials properties later on. First observation about sculpting in VR is that the default edit is much smaller for some reason. I'm currently scaling up to the default size for non-VR, which is what I'm used to. I like to use a large enough edit that it won't be covered up easily, and I'll show you one reason for that in a bit. The sculpture I'm currently working on is available in the Dreamiverse as Industrial Panel 3. It's about as glamorous as it sounds. It's meant to be a straight wall piece, and this is why most of the sculpting geometry will take place on grid. I want to establish that the perimeter for this thing is 4 floor hashes wide and 2 floor hashes tall, so I will lay down one side of this very quickly using a few small edits. I start with one, copy the edit, drag it out with plenty of overlap, and then tap right D-pad to make a bunch of outside clones from there. Conversely, you can drag the cloned edit to the desired position and then tap left D-pad a bunch of times to fill the gap with inside clones. One nice thing about that initial sphere edit, now I have a handle that gives me a clear indication where I'm grabbing, and I can rotate from there. This allows me to continue to use the floor to measure rather than guessing, counting dots, or using rulers. One issue in VR is inadvertently moving in the depth axis, and I believe I figured out where I was going wrong there. If you move your hands, then it is very difficult to maintain the depth of an object or an edit. However, if you keep your hands still and instead move the camera by a combination of L1 and the thumbsticks, this is much more solid in that respect. This is something you generally don't have to contend with outside of VR because things tend to stay put in depth. And it's interesting that there are consequences to actually being comfortable with using the gyro once you've moved from regular space to the VR space. Once I figured that out, I had a much easier time getting the basic structure of this wall finished. From there, I will rotate the shape back into place and continue working. By the way, you may notice some heavy vignetting going on with the image. I've turned this up under comfort settings to help eliminate some of the motion sickness from turning. This works pretty well and is not a hindrance while sculpting so far. Let's give this wall some features. I'm going to create a ring around the inside perimeter of this thing with spheres, and I am not surface snapped, which is remarkable in hindsight. However, these edits are fairly large and also aligned with the grid, so not a huge deal as long as I manage to move my camera and not my hands. This looks puffy and toony, and I want a harder edged appearance, so I'm going to flatten out the tops of these spheres with a couple of large boxes. I've gotten into the habit of throwing edits down and then adjusting them later. As a result, my initial application of this shape will be coarse and not look good. I'll then use Precise Move and the Move tool to adjust it by hand until it is pleasing to look at. I want to give this more character, so I will excavate some panels for rivets. If you're doing a heavy industrial look, rivets are great even though nothing is riveted anymore. You can also do weld seams, but you want to make sure to exaggerate them, and it's really a different type of impact. I'm sure there are many different ways to do rivets. One way is to make them a separate sculpt, and that allows you to give them a slightly different materials look, which helps set them apart. But for this sculpture, I'll do everything with a single sculpt. When you do that, it's important that they be a little larger than life so they stand out better in the design, and also so they hold up against sculpture detail reduction. If you make them too small, they'll melt into the surface at all but the highest graphics costs. I like to use half spheres for these because they transition to the shape underneath slightly better than full spheres, in my opinion. One key to adding rivets to a composition is to not use too many. These are very efficient shapes in that it only takes a few to sell the idea. Too many and it looks cluttered and more like a pattern than a functional thing that is holding stuff together. I had no way of noticing this while in the VR space, but the frame of reference here is starting to tilt quite dramatically to the left. I'm not quite sure what occurred. It's possible I turned slightly in my chair and didn't realize it, or that my head was tilted for a while. But either way, the controls started giving me a lot of difficulty at this point. Shaking the controller was working fine, but it would nearly instantly get out of whack. I tried leaving the controller on a flat surface for a while to recenter it, but I didn't have a decent flat surface in front of me. So I'm not sure if it was VR or just dreams. Even without VR involved, I occasionally have run-ins with dreams where I want to smash my controller into tiny pieces, and then the next day there are no issues, so it's a mystery. I did manage to plod along for another 10 minutes while being minimally productive, but after a while I'd had enough of feeling like I was trying to reel in a fish, so I quit and finished this up outside of VR. My controller was still being a pain after that, but nowhere near as badly, so I think VR was definitely at least partially the culprit. So in this video we took a look at sculpting in VR with Dreams for PS4 on the grid, started out with some marginal success and then failed big time. If you have any suggestions or theories concerning the problems expressed in this video, please share them in the comments for the benefit of me and all those that may be watching. The next VR video I will go off grid and try making something more organic, and we'll see if I have better luck that way. After that I'll be doing a video of me dragging myself kicking and screaming back to the Moves controllers in VR. I've had the Moves for as long as I've had Dreams, but I learned to use Dreams on the DS4 and I prefer to use the DS4 for Dreams. But I'm hoping that VR provides a space where I can find the Moves more useful, so stay tuned for that. But that's all for now. Until next time, I'll see you in the Dreamiverse.